This is the quick cream cheese frosting I use for small layer cakes, piping cupcakes, and even topping cinnamon rolls. It frosts super smooth, you can pipe intricate designs with it, and it's not because of any particular ingredient that I'm gonna use, but rather the way that I put them together, which may be a little bit different than what you're used to seeing. As for the texture, it's got this super delicate crust on the outside that's similar in thickness to like a Krispy Kreme donut glaze, but it's super creamy on the inside. And I'll be showing you two variations today. So the regular vanilla cream cheese frosting, and because the first question that everybody always asks me whenever I make a frosting recipe is, will it chocolate? I'll show you the chocolate variation as well. So when it comes to cream cheese and a frosting, I think when most of us see this, we think of this, butter. And that kind of makes sense. They're both solid, but they have very different fat and water compositions. Cream cheese is actually more similar to this heavy cream, and so must be treated differently than butter when making a frosting. So let me show you.
But first, let me back up for a second and show you how I used to make cream cheese frosting. I would add room temperature softened butter, then room temperature cream cheese, and beat that together until it was nice and creamy. Looks good so far. Then I would add in sifted powdered sugar and flavoring such as vanilla or salt and mix on low speed until it's smooth. And this is where it starts to get problematic. It's a little bit too loose for any type of cake filling. And there's a couple things that's causing the frosting to act like this, but one of the primary reasons is that the sugar, or sucrose specifically, is highly hygroscopic, meaning it's gonna attract or pull water if the water is nearby. And cream cheese has lots of water, almost 55% of it is water. Now it does have a few stabilizers in that water to give it a thick consistency, but the sugar is much stronger and is going to pull out that water. So by adding all of the powdered sugar at the end, I cause the cream cheese to leak water and kind of deflate, giving it that consistency. And you can see that this is at a low room temperature, so low 70s. There's no way that this would be able to survive inside of a cake or if you wanted to pipe something. So here's my method, and we'll do the vanilla version first. For the 5 ingredients, we'll need full fat cream cheese in block form, and that's cold from the fridge, unsalted butter, also cold from the fridge, powdered or icing sugar, vanilla, and salt. Okay, first up is to smooth out the cream cheese, and I'm just gonna use my hand mixer on low speed to smooth it out. You can use a stand mixer, just make sure that you match the same texture that I show you throughout this process. And I like using cold cream cheese because inevitably it's going to soften as we work with it, and so it's good to stay on the colder side to ensure that it's not too soft later on. You can then smash the cream cheese with a spatula, and the cream cheese can be lumpy sometimes, and I'm not sure if that's from the milk fat or from the stabilizers. Throughout this process, I will always mix on low speed or by hand when working with the cream cheese. The stabilizers in the cream cheese, they're called thixotropic, and that just means that they thin out when you mix it too vigorously. This is a reversible process, so when you stop mixing and leave it alone, it'll eventually thicken back up, but I just like to handle it as little as possible. So go ahead and set that cream cheese aside for now. Okay, add the cold butter to a large bowl. And again, it's gonna warm up as we work with it, and use the mixer to smooth it out until there are no lumps. And now I'm gonna add the sugar in 3 parts, mostly so it doesn't make a mess, but it's also easier to mix in this way. And it'll seem like way too much powdered sugar for the amount of butter, but it will work. And it doesn't have to be sifted because we're gonna work it into the butter so thoroughly that no lumps have any chance of surviving. Now it may look like we're doing things out of order because in most American type buttercreams, we typically add the powdered sugar last. What's happening when we add the sugar to the butter in the beginning of the recipe is that the sugar is being encased or coated in the butter fat. This is probably creating a protective, waterproof barrier between the sugar, which is now trapped in the butter, and the cream cheese, which is added later on. This is the main reason for this frosting not being runny. So you don't want to rush this step. And when you get to the last third of the sugar, add the vanilla and salt as well. Now this is the longest part of this process, and it might take you a couple minutes, but in the end, what you're looking for is the butter sugar mixture to collect, and it'll form into a ball, and it'll look and feel like a creamy colored sugar cookie dough. Now it's time to add in the smoothed out cream cheese, and I just add it all at once and mix on low speed. You may see some lumps at the end. That's the cream cheese trying to mix in with that butter sugar mixture, so just keep going until it's smooth, but you do want to mix it as little as possible, prevent the cream cheese from thinning too much. You can use a spatula to kind of smooth it out at the end as well. I went ahead and covered it with plastic wrap so it didn't develop a crust while I prepped the cake layers. You definitely want to do this if you're not working with the frosting within about a half hour. And now I want to show you how this buttercream frosts on a cake. cake. So here I have my sprinkle cake, and I'm gonna do a 6-inch 2-layer cake. So keep it really simple, and I'm gonna fill with this frosting as well as add in some sprinkles and then do a light crumb coat. As far as density goes, it's definitely on the thicker side, but not so thick that it makes it unspreadable or that it will tear into the cake. It's still very smooth. And when you get that second top coat on, because of the low mixing speed, there are very few air bubbles and air pockets. So I only had to do a couple passes with my bench scraper to get it nice and smooth. And this stuff pipes incredibly well. Okay, and for those of you who are interested in the chocolate version of this cream cheese frosting, it's the same idea. We're just gonna add a cocoa powder paste. And the ingredients are unsweetened cocoa powder, and you can use any kind that you like. This is Hershey's Dark, water, full fat cream cheese, unsalted butter, and powdered sugar. And the first thing I'm going to do is add the water to the cocoa powder and stir until it forms a thick paste. And then I'll cover it to reduce evaporation, and I just like to use an old butter wrapper and microwave this on high for 15 to 20 seconds. So this is my favorite way to make frostings chocolate flavored. Chocolate bars or solid chocolate are okay, but they often contain other ingredients like sugar or milk products. Cocoa powder, on the other hand, is a super concentrated form of pure chocolate to add to things. By adding water like this to it and heating it, we break open the starch granules and allow them to thicken the water, and that creates a thick paste that has very little granularity or grittiness and also incorporates into the frosting a lot more evenly. So this next part's gonna be pretty similar to the vanilla cream cheese. You gotta smooth out the cream cheese and then set that aside, and then mix the butter and add in the powdered sugar in thirds until it comes together like sugar cookie dough. Then you'll go ahead and add that cocoa powder paste and mix that in. And then we'll add in the cream cheese. Remember, we wanna mix the cream cheese as little as possible, so that's always gonna go in last. So mix that in on low speed, and here's the chocolate frosting. Now I'm gonna pipe this on cupcakes since I didn't have another cake at the moment, but you'll see that it pipes very well. And what you see here is what I do when I don't have a cake. I just use a plate, and this is how I test all of the frostings that I work with before I actually put it on the cake to minimize waste. And by doing this, I'm able to see the consistency, I'm able to see the smoothing texture, and then feel it when it pipes. And this one does have a slightly looser consistency than the vanilla one, most likely due to the extra water that was added for the cocoa powder paste. However, I think you'll find that it'll pipe and frost just fine.
Okay, I've left these cakes out at room temperature for 2 hours. That's usually the window that you want to leave cakes or anything kind of desserts that have cream cheese for safety reasons out at room temperature. So we have a super nice crust on the outside of this cake. Oh, let me tell you that it's 72 degrees in here, Fahrenheit, and 42% humidity. With that, it does form a crust, and it's also forming a crust on the chocolate as well. So it's nice and shiny. It's really not going anywhere. It's really set firmly on the top of that cupcake as well as on the cake. There's no bulging. Looks really nice. So let's cut into it and I'll show you the inside.
And here's the finished frosting. I think you'll really like this one. It stays super creamy on the interior and develops that really beautiful light crust on the outside. It's not too sweet, and it does have that tanginess from the cream cheese. If you want to increase the tanginess, I highly suggest using a bit of lemon juice. Citric acid pairs well with the lactic acid that's inside cream cheese to increase the acidity. Now, because it's not too sweet, of course, people will ask, can I make it sweeter? And to that, I would be careful because of the way that I make the cream cheese and add the powdered sugar to the butter. We want to make sure that we don't add so much powdered sugar that it's not fully encased in fat, because at that point you might end up making the cream cheese too runny, but it's totally up to you. I hope you like this one.